Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today, where we'll be talking about how to effectively engage the community in juvenile record clearance. My name is Chidi Umez. I am the project manager with the Criminal Records Project here at the Council of State Governments Justice Center. The Council of State Governments Justice Center provides practical, nonpartisan, research-driven strategies and tools to increase public safety and strengthen communities. Before we get started, I'd like to talk through a couple of housekeeping items before we get started about how the webinar is going to work. Anytime during the webinar, you can ask a question by typing it into the Q&A panel on the bottom right portion of your screen. This includes both technical and content-related questions. We will try to reply to technical questions in the chat window as we go. For content-related questions, we'll keep a running list, and we will address them at the end of the presentation, and we'll do our best to get through as many questions as possible. If you do encounter technical or audio problems during this webinar, please call WebEx Technical Support at 1-866-229-3239. Please understand that there are some technical issues we may not be able to resolve, and for this reason, we are recording the content portion of this webinar, and we will post it to our website, the cleanslate.clearinghouse.org, and we should have that webinar posted online in the coming weeks. Our presenters today are Serena Holthe, Senior Staff Attorney and Pro Bono Counsel with the National Juvenile Defender Center, José Loya, the Strategic Communications Manager with the National Juvenile Defender Center, and Victor Dempsey, Community Organizer, Defense Practice with the Legal Aid Society. This webinar is part of the Clean Slate Clearinghouse, a project funded by the U.S. Department of Labor and the U.S. Department of Justice. The Clean Slate Clearinghouse was created to support juvenile and adult record clearance across the country by providing up-to-date information on record clearance, as well as contact information for legal service providers in all U.S. states and territories. It was created by developing tools and resources for legal service providers currently engaged in record clearance work, or those who want to expand their criminal record clearance services, and providing information to compare record clearance policies across jurisdictions and to learn about best practices. The site was designed to capture three target audiences, one being people with criminal records who are seeking to have their record cleared, two, legal service providers who offer record clearance services, and policymakers who want to compare record clearance policies across the country. With the primary goals of providing accessibility, up-to-date information for record clearance policies across the country, and increasing the capacity of legal service providers, while creating a community of practice around record clearance. Within those groups, however, the Clearinghouse also anticipates that the site will be used by reentry and workforce service providers who can connect people to services, by indigent defense attorneys or pro bono attorneys who are interested in starting or expanding their record clearance practices, researchers and journalists who want to compare trends in record clearance legislation across the country. We encourage you to visit the website and sign up for our newsletter to receive information on news, events, and webinars such as this one. And with that, I will hand it over to Serena.
Thank you so much for participating today. We're glad that you're joining us. From our collective experiences, Victor, Jose, and myself, in working in record clearance issues, we've learned a tremendous amount about what works and what doesn't work when it comes to engaging communities in record clearance. It's hard, definitely not something regularly taught in a law school, though it definitely should be because it's tremendously important for public interest attorneys especially to know. But it's extremely important to make sure that as many people as possible are getting their records cleared. And we're talking about young people who, during a time in their lives, it's very important as they're transitioning to adulthood to make sure there's as few barriers as possible to their success. So we have addressed many of these challenges that we're going to talk about today, and look forward to answering your questions, which we will do at the end of our slides. So one of the biggest hurdles and challenges we have in juvenile record clearance is there are three main myths that people believe. And as I've gone throughout the country and talked about juvenile records and collateral consequences to juvenile court involvement, these are things I hear everywhere. My juvenile record disappears when I turn 18. I will never have to answer questions about my juvenile record on applications, and my juvenile record will not show up on a background check. Sadly, these things many times are not true. There are many states that have, a large majority of states that have juvenile records that are available to the public. And then there are young people who will be answering questions on applications that will ask about their juvenile record, ask about arrests, or ask about probation or diversion, or even an adjudication. So it is oftentimes completely wrong, but even people who work within the court system believe, oh, it's just a juvenile matter. It's not a big deal. It's never going to cause any problems with this person's life, so, don't worry about it. Don't think about it. And these are big hurdles because we have to overcome these general myths in order to get people engaged and in the process of clearing their records. Because if they don't see that it's a problem first, we're going to end up not being able to get as many people involved in getting their records cleared. So it's one of the biggest challenges. And as many as people as possible who are engaged in this webinar or in your communities, it's important to make sure that we all understand that juvenile records do have consequences and that it's very important that they do get cleared whenever possible. So in my experience, I've been involved in record clearance activities for many, many years, and there's many times where we might have an event or we provide services, but there's just not, for some reason, we're just not reaching the entire community. We're not getting as many people to our events. We might offer the record clearance services, but very few people are coming and taking advantage of those. I really do think it's because, number one, that people just don't understand the importance of record clearance, especially juvenile records. There's so much conversation out there about the importance of addressing adult records and criminal records. I don't think people quite understand that juvenile records have, in many states, the same or even almost just as the same as adult records. And so we have to make sure that communities understand the importance of juvenile record clearance so that they can take advantage of the services that are being offered. Few often might attend our clinics or other events. We, in organizations I've worked with, may have had I don't know why we use the word clinic, but we have had clinics or other record clearance events, and sometimes just not that many people are actually showing up. We feel like we may have done what we could to tell people about it, but for some reason people just don't come. And the record clearance process and eligibility requirements are actually quite confusing. So for the Clean Slate Clearinghouse project, that the website went live, we did all the research and we read all the statutes and contacted local counsel to help us analyze those statutes in each state, and they are crazy complicated. So I don't, as a lawyer who's practiced in this area for many years, there were several states that I just could not wrap my head around. I had to get assistance. I had to reread it 5 or 6 times, spend a few days like mulling it through my mind and trying to figure it out. but it was really complicated. So, you know, having people, young people who haven't gone to law school but have this issue in their lives, but they can't quite understand because the process is so confusing. And oftentimes when there are maybe pro se petitions available, those petitions are written in the same language that the statutes are written in, which is still confusing. And so even though they're considered pro se petitions, they just aren't very helpful. And so these are some of the challenges that we have seen as we've been trying to get more and more young people into our office, or get more and more young people engaged and have their records to be cleared to take advantage of what the record clearance could do for them. So those are our challenges, but the keys to effective engagement with our communities, these are actually things that could apply to all sorts of areas of work that we do. Today we're focusing on juvenile record clearance, but these are ideas that you could probably apply to many of the areas in which you work, whether it's civil legal aid or a public defender's office or a nonprofit. We want to be engaged with our communities. We want to be part of our communities. And so these are really, we're going to go through several keys that we think are so important to make sure that we keep in mind, and things that we've learned through our years of practice in this area that can help us make sure that we are reaching as many people as possible, and we are getting more and more people, people's records cleared. Victor?
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. So as Serena was saying, especially talking about our challenges, and when we try to figure out how to address the challenges, you know, we think of some solutions or things that will go hand in hand as far as community engagement. So one of the first things that we try to acknowledge is building rapport with these communities, you know, from different walks of life. So when we talk about building the rapport aspect, I try to think of where am I meeting people at, right? I know a lot of us are in grass organizations, PD firms or big law firms, and sometimes they may not be as directly accessible as to the areas that we're servicing. And, you know, we may have clients that are traveling some distance, maybe by public transportation and things like that. So what I've been able to do and build a lot of trust is trying to meet our clients here in New York in these areas, where our clients are mostly living, whether it be NYCHA housing or public housing or things like that. What I found in that time is really trying to connect with a local community center, something like that, and holding space there. The clients are more comfortable because they're in an area that they know, you know, and we're also showing them that we're willing to come to you and do no matter what it takes to get you the information that you will need. Another thing that we try to do, not just meeting them in these spaces, but really listening to them, right? Like we all know when we're talking about, you know, policymakers and people that can help change the laws and how do we get them to understand it, because a lot of the language can be very confusing at times, right? So what we try to do is, for instance, in New York, we do a lot of know your rights trainings where they know the concept of why we're there, but we don't just go on and on and on and on about what we're there for. We kind of make it more interactive. So that gives us a chance to listen to the communities that we're servicing and get their take on what it is that we're talking about. And like Serena said, this can go to many different fields. When we're talking about juvenile rights, you know, one thing that we try to do is to understand how are the juveniles in this area being affected directly, right? Who's giving them the information if it's not us? Or where are they going to get information from? And then really, you know, working with them to gauge what we can and cannot do, or what's the best approach to helping them deal with these issues. Building relationships and making the connections, I think that's the most important part, to community engagement to me, you know, being a community organizer for a firm, it's very important to us that not only do we build the relationships, but we're consistent with them. Because just making that connection, anyone can connect, right? We can connect over our favorite ice cream flavor or just our favorite sports team or something like that, and we can all get a laugh out of that. But how does that conversation continue to evolve, right? How does that conversation move forward in a space to where now this person would say, hey, you know what, let me give Jose a call, let me give Victor a call, let me give Serena a call. They may know something about this, right? So that consistency on our platform has always looked as follow-up phone calls, you know, just checking on them, even when they don't need help, or even if I just have a moment through the day, I might have thought about an organization I worked with or a client I assisted, and just giving them that call, and then, you know, it kind of goes a long way. It's going, oh, hey, thanks, I'm actually good, everything worked out, but I definitely appreciate the call. So not only am I showing them that we're still here, but I'm kind of keeping myself in their minds, because they may even connect us to another client in need of any type of service, right? Or just making sure that we're at that forefront of any type of services they may need. So the consistency aspect is a big key to building the relationship, because a lot of them don't know us, you know. They don't know what kind of walks of life any of us came from. They don't know why we got into this field, you know. So sometimes building that little connection there helps them trust us more and just confide in us so we can take a step back and, again, listen and learn from the community. One other thing, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all right, Victor. And I just wanted to piggyback off of everything that you're saying, because it's so important. And I think that one of the pieces that's key with that connection is we're dealing with young people in that period of adolescence. And I think that what they're looking for is that consistency and that constancy, you know. So so I agree 100%.
Exactly. So that the last part, I'm not sure anyone can see it on here, but, you know, be present and available in the community, not just on event days. I read that one specifically out loud because that's something that, you know, at times we all lead busy lives and doing the work that we're all doing, but that is probably one of the cardinal rules in my work, right? It's being present on a regular basis, not just when it's a big event, when it's a summer kickoff. You know, nowadays everyone's gearing up for the back-to-school book bag events and things like that. Yes, I'm sure our clients need this type of services, but it's when it's not holidays coming up or it's not nice outside, when it's pouring and raining, when it's a possible thunderstorm coming out, where they might actually need those services just as well. So what we try to do, just a few examples really quick, is, you know, we try to work with the organizations that are deeply rooted into these communities that we're servicing, and we'll talk about that a little later. But we try to work with them so we're always present. It's not us reaching out when we have a new policy that was just passed or, you know, raise the age or something like that coming up. No, we try to want to stay in contact with them throughout the year, all and all. So when we do come into these communities with pertinent information, we're already being accepted there. They know that whatever information that we're bringing is valuable because we place value on it. And we also show them how it can work and help them in their everyday lives. Like Serena said earlier, just them knowing the laws in every state is vastly different, but knowing the laws for juveniles in general, that's a big thing that everyone needs to understand why it's so important. But the best way to do that is to build that relationship, be present on a regular basis, so the things that they may not think they care about at the moment, they'll care about it even more because it's coming from someone that they trust. I don't know if that makes sense to everyone, but that's kind of my approach on a lot of the stuff dealing with community organizing.
And I think that in Jose and my experiences, I think we're exactly the same. I think that it's the relationship building, the being available and being the community part is essential. And here, that's just not something they teach us in law school or talk about, the soft skills that come along with all of this. I think it's just something that we just need to wrap our minds around, make sure that we do get some training on because it's so, so important.
Mm-hmm. So now, even with speaking about, you know, our specific plan, obviously, right? We have attorneys in different fields, whether it's, you know, social workers working in firms or just trial attorneys or whatever the case be. All these skills, these soft skills are so essential to all the work that we're doing when we're putting it together collectively, you know. One hand washes the other, so to speak. So we're talking about power partnerships. Serena, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we're speaking about power partnerships, right? First thing that comes to my mind when I hear of the word partnerships is who's going to help me help them? That's kind of how I try to look at it, because really it's all of evolving doors, right? I'm not the gatekeeper to all of the services, but if I'm that trusted resource that a community member has, then it's really my duty to explore options and make sure I have other resources for other areas, you know, not kind of be one-dimensional, but really having it in a way where once we get them intrigued on learning the policies or learning the laws that's being brought up, now how do we keep them engaged, right? So we talked about the relationship part and evolving that relationship, but now it's really keeping them engaged with retaining all of the information that we're going to give them, right? So that's kind of why I talk about why partnership. So we talk about partner organizations that already serve the target population. That's a big thing, because in my work right now, and when I'm meeting organizations or grassroots organizations that's already so deeply embedded within communities, they're actually the people that the communities trust. It's not me, but I can get the community to trust me because these organizations work with them so closely. So it's kind of me piggybacking on some, for lack of better words right now, kind of riding their coattail to get my way in. But it's still in all, it's up to me to, you know, hold myself accountable to not mess up those relationships as well. But I really think partnerships go so much further than that, because when I'm thinking about, like, for instance, right now in New York, you know, we have the Raise the Age Act that's passed, where now we can actually start treating 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds a lot differently from, you know, having to be brought into the court system straightforward, or having a docket number, anything like that. Now we have the deterrent programs where we can help keep young men out of the juvenile system. So one thing that we're trying to do now is identify programs that work with youth, whether it's just reentry or wraparound services or anything like that. So before the actual law passes next month, we have resources that coincide with that directly. Right, so we're trying to use organizations that's already doing that work, and we're just giving them the tools from a legal aspect to help propel their work forward. So yes, we can come in and do the seminars, we can come in and do the workshops, but all in all, we're pretty much training the trainers, and that's kind of tightening our partnership there. And what it does is, as we're training these trainers moving forward, ever so often, the clients or the participants that are there, they start seeing our faces more and more and more. And we all know when you see somebody's face more, or you see somebody in that suit or whatever it is, you get intrigued, hey, who's that? Who's this person, you know? And then that's where I give my cards out, I have a conversation with these people one-on-one, or the clients one-on-one, and I start developing more relationships that way. Youth voices. That's like our bread and butter there, you know. The youth are the ones who are explaining to us what they're going through directly. The youth are the ones that can help reshape how we look at things, right? And it's always new ideas coming up, in my opinion. But to get them to understand the benefits of juvenile record clearance and legal services available, that's always been tricky. I think that's why we're all here today. It's because, you know, when the youth are coming, oh man, my phone hung up.
Nope,
hello?
We got you, Victor. We still hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Like I was saying, when youth are coming up, you know, they're starting to think about jobs. They're starting to think about ways to earn money, or what they're going to wear for prom, or things like that. Hopefully that's what most of our kids are thinking of. But now to kind of get them to not switch gears, but to get them to be multi-talented with using their mind to think about so many things at one time, it's kind of hard. It's not the easiest task to have put on them, right? But for the ones who may have gotten involved in some kind of early stages of law enforcement or any type of conviction, things like that, they may be the ones who are going to be affected by this later on down the line, but yet and still, they're still thinking about making a living for themselves. So that might be that may not be their primary focus. So how do we not change their focus but enhance their focus for them, right? So luckily in New York, I'm able to utilize what we call a cure violence model out here, crisis management system. So we have these 22 programs that we can come directly in and bring youth to them. We're not just going out saying, hey, you need to stop selling drugs, you need to stop robbing or doing whatever it is that you're doing because it's not good for you. No, we're coming in and saying, you know what, we understand why you're doing that, but there's a better way to do it. And when they ask us how, say, hey, come over here, let's show you this. You know, now we're teaching them the employment skills, how to build an interview, how to write a resume, things of that nature. So we're giving them the extra outlet. And I also think this is how what we're doing here now by raising the awareness to it, right? Getting them to understand that it's not over yet, but you need to understand all of your options. Any questions on any of that or anybody else?
You know, I was just thinking that it's, you know, power of partnerships is important because of oftentimes we are so busy and we're just thinking, oh my gosh, when am I going to have time to do all of this, right? That's building relationships so much. But this is one way that, you know, it doesn't have to all come from us, right? We don't have to start from scratch by partnering with other organizations that are already there every single day. We might not be able to be there every single day, but when we partner with organizations that are there and that are trusted, we can really be able to reach people quicker. And, you know, I think as Victor was talking about, it's kind of like piggybacking on the trust that they've already created. But on the flip side of that, we got to make sure that we earn that trust ourselves and that we follow up and stay accountable to those relationships too.
Mm. Exactly. And another thing I really wanted to point out, and this is just like one example that I always use a lot because it really is tremendous to us, especially in New York. You know, we are able to work with a lot of groups, and like I do safe surrenders personally. Safe surrenders are us, let's say if a client is in possession of illegal substance or weapons for that matter. I will go out, meet with them, you know, take that off their hands, deal with clergy, and have clergy turn it over to the authorities. You know, when no one's involved, no one's name is being written on the piece of paper. The client's not interacting with the clergy. It's me going step by step by step. And we built a reputation of doing that to help attorneys out, even with other clients. We have attorneys that call us and say, hey, I'm in the middle of litigation. I just want my client to get rid of this. Can you help us out? And we'll take care of it. But that came with the trust factor. I've even had clients call me maybe 2 weeks afterwards, just to ask about another service I may be able to help them with. Now, whether I can help them or not, I'm not sure. But the fact that they're calling back for anything else keeps us involved, you know. And that's always something that I'm very, 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 very big on. It's not, you know, blistering those relationships and helping them to fulfill and flourish further. So yeah, that's my take on partnerships, because I really put a lot of emphasis on that, because I can't, like Serena said, I can't be everywhere 24/7. I just can't do it. But if I can have people that's interested in the knowledge, empower them through the knowledge, and then continuously feed them information as they want. I'm not telling them this is what you need. I'm not telling them this is what you have to do. I'm kind of steering them in the right direction and intriguing them enough to keep coming back for more, so to speak. So now ideas of partnership. How do we do this? Networking, resources, you know. Same thing we're all doing now. We're on the phone. We're networking right now. So we have YMCAs, we have youth-led organizations, big brothers, big sisters, workforce development and organization skills, organizational trainings, community colleges, churches, local law schools. And even aside from that, we do a lot of work with ACS type of things. Any place that are involved with kids from foster care, from group homes, adoption agencies, things like that, we try to get involved with also. And, you know, we have a really deep hold within public schools in New York. where we go to these schools and we do school to prison pipeline workshops with the youth, talk to them about social media best practices, and, you know, just all of these different aspects just to keep them engaged on different levels. So the ideas of partnership is pretty much so broad that we can come up with lists for all of our significant areas of where we're at, or any places that we know where youth kind of congregate at mostly, you know. We've even had Starbucks at one point out here host a tutor night, which is Tuesday nights, where we have youth come in with paid tutors that will help young people get ready for their SATs.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
We also, when I worked in Seattle, had worked very closely with youth and young adult homeless shelters. You know, I think it was last year that Chapin Hall's study came out that showed over 50% of young people between the ages of 18 and 24 that were experiencing homelessness had involvement with the juvenile court system. And so I think that that's a great place to partner with, because those kids are having a lot of barriers to their success, and if we can make sure that we partner with those organizations and help them as much as possible, especially as regarding to record clearance, I think that is another great organization to make sure that we can connect with and make sure those young people are receiving record clearance services.
And can I add this one last piece before we move on from this topic? It's also, too, within my unit at Legal Aid, you know, I work for a unit, the Community Justice Unit. It's not just the community organizing aspect that plays a major part in this, but believe it or not, the community lawyering aspect plays a big part into my work as well. So my unit is comprised of 10 attorneys, and their sole focus is community lawyering. So they're the ones who actually go out. We hold office hours in different communities throughout New York City, to where the community at large members can come in and they tell us what their issues are, whether it's housing, immigration, probate, whatever it is. They come to us and they talk to us about our issues. And believe it or not, that's how we actually come up with our topics for workshops. Just from the office hours, from sitting with maybe 5 or 6 clients in that evening, and we're actually servicing them. But now when we come back for our monthly meeting, we'll sit down, we'll talk to each other and say, hey, well, this is what I had the most of in this area. I had the most of this in that area. What can we do to service that? Let's say it's a domestic violence type of thing. And then we'll come back maybe 2 months later with a domestic violence workshop, so to speak. You know what I mean? But I'm saying all this to say that we're listening to the communities as well. So all the attorneys in my unit, I hands down hats up to them, because they're the ones who are able to make the clients comfortable enough to come in, especially the youth. The youth right now are like our focal point, just because of the raise the age stuff in New York. And that's not always easy, like I said, dealing with that mentality, especially with them becoming young adults, young men and young women. But it's really just being there for them and kind of guiding them through these processes. But like I said, the biggest key for us is empowerment. That's it, just the empowerment. Whenever we can, moving on from a record or trying to get a job, trying to get a GED, we're giving them all the tools they need.
All right, looks like I'm up, folks. Thank you for jumping in on this call. Just really thankful that everyone's invested in better outcomes for young people. And, you know, I'm just here to have a conversation. So Victor, Serena, anytime you want to jump in, feel free to jump in on any of these pieces. And so the idea when we talk about language is just keeping it simple, keeping it positive, trying to find ways to make what we're talking about as inclusive as possible. How do we break it down for the layperson to be able to understand? And then even more than that, for young people and children to be able to understand. And the idea is to be able to get information out there for individuals. I come from Philadelphia, where I did quite a bit of community organizing. And the big thing is just being able to talk to people, getting out there, having a conversation with them, and being able to understand what's impacting them, what's setting them back. And that's the start of that conversation. There's many people that I would go into community centers with city council members And I'd ask folks, how many of you think that records disappear when you're 18? People would raise their hands, and then I would say to them, they don't disappear, you know. And then I would say, hey, listen, I'm going to be in the back of the room, so come talk to me afterwards. And you would be surprised. I would have 15, 16, 17 folks that were easily above the age of 40 that would be coming by to talk about their juvenile records and about record clearance. And the idea was to be able to give them information and to be able to connect them with people that could help them. And the big thing for me was always being in a position to be able to give out my phone number. Now, what that meant is each time you give out your phone number, you're opening up the gates for people to be able to reach out to you, and so that might end up increasing the volume. But again, it's trying to build those relationships with people, and just letting people know that, you know, it's a piece where we want people to be able to move forward, and part of that community organizing is certainly being able to use language to be able to connect with young people, to be able to connect with their families. But I also think that there's an important piece that as we're going out and we're educating, that we're also able to talk with local business owners, that we're able to talk to our local churches as well, and with different sectors of our community, just to be able to help them understand what all of this means and what it is that young people are up against in terms of collateral consequences and how we can invest in being able to move forward. Now, Serena, Victor, anything that you would like to comment on?
I just would add that, you know, I have seen some flyers for events related to record clearance that includes all of the eligibility requirements, and it's probably not the best thing I would recommend because it's oftentimes really confusing, could be misconstrued or misread, and oftentimes I think it's really just best to just say, come on in and we'll talk about it. If there's maybe 1 or 2 parameters you could give, a waiting period or something. But other than that, I generally suggest not putting your eligibility, your record clearance eligibility requirements on a flyer. What I've seen it end up doing is actually keeping people away that may have otherwise been eligible. And the other side of that is explaining to why it's important to have their records cleared. And in my experience, there's 2 main things that are why it's important to not us lawyers who get caught up in the weeds many times, but it's can the record clearance remove my record from public access, and does it give me the opportunity to act as if it never happened? And if those 2 things are true, I think we need to emphasize that in our communications with folks about why they need to get their records cleared. Other than, I think there's some other things that I think we've talked about. Well, it limits the people who can look at it, or I think we just have to be much more clear about what we're saying. How is this going to affect your future opportunities? And by getting your record cleared, you can, you know, prevent a future employer from being able to access it and deny you a job because you have a record or something like that. Being very clear with those parameters.
And I think that's really great, Serena. And you know, I think less is more when it comes to the language piece. And it would be great to see people lead with a flyer that says something like, you know, do you think that your record disappears when you're 18? You know, are you ready to move forward? You know, can people look at my record? You know, can I apply for jobs with a record? You know, and the idea is that sometimes, yes, when we do put too much information on a flyer, what it is we're limiting that net of people that are coming in, and you know, there might be some offenses, there might be some other pieces on an individual's record that might be eligible for expungement, while others, you know, the young person might still have to wait. But the idea is building that relationship, getting them in, and giving them more information. And oftentimes what I find is that young people are then going to go back, and they're building off of all the things that Victor has been saying, is there's that trust, there's that rapport, and oftentimes they're going to give your business card to someone else in the family, to another friend, someone else that is impacted. And that's a good thing. That means that the message is spreading. So, Victor, not sure if you want to add anything or not.
I mean, I think you guys covered everything. I mean, I don't want to sound redundant, but I will. But, yeah, we see that happen a lot. You know, the less on the fly, the better. I know some people think they want to explain everything to get the right crowd in. But a lot of times I've had workshops where I've had young men aunts or uncles come in, and a young man may be incarcerated at the time, but they just want to know how can they set them up when they're coming home. So we don't know who's in the audience, but I think the best thing for that is just like they said too, and we go back to relationships. Just because a young person isn't there for this specific service, it can lead into partnering for further service, right? And a lot of times, I can't even count how many times I've done a workshop, and it resulted into scheduling 2 or 3 more workshops after the one that we're already in. So I'm always mindful of who's around or who I'm presenting to, and just not keeping it so close to where we're dwindling our numbers, the potential numbers rather. You know, we can say we have enough room for 30, but I want to get about 50 in there, because maybe out of that, the 50 that I want to service, maybe I can help 15 of them, and the other 25 can be for another type of service. So we should never kind of put ourselves in a box, so to speak. And, you know, let's kind of leave it open and let the clients pass that judgment or choose what type of service they need as well.
No, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. You know, and that just made me realize that one of the benefits of being able to go out into the community and being able to build these relationships is that you know, you get to be on the front lines. You get to see what's happening in communities, what it is, what some of those challenges are. And I think that helps inform our eye and our advocacy, especially when it comes to policy. And it gives us an opportunity to also be able to hear from people in the community as far as, you know, what's setting them back, what are they benefiting from, you know, where it is that they can need help. And so then really what that does is it's driving this informed, community advocacy when it comes to policy. So thanks very much, Victor.
Yes, yes.
And I did want to clarify something. When we're talking about record clearance and juvenile record clearance, it's called something different in every state. Some states use the word expungement. Some states use the word sealing. Expungement in one state might work different than expungement in another state. So when we're talking about these issues in general, we just use the term record clearance because it varies by state. And one place that you can go to look and to see exactly what is the effect, what is it called in my state, and what is the effect of it, is the Clean Slate Clearinghouse website, which was referenced earlier, and I think we'll again on another slide have that website listed. But just know that when we say record clearance, we're referring to sealing or expungement or deletion or expunction, or there's a lot of names that states use for this. Quickly, I'm just going to talk about logistics that's already been talked about through other slides, but I want to be very clear that this is important, that the location of, if you're having an event or if you're meeting with clients, the location needs to be easily accessible for your target audience. Sometimes we sit in our offices downtown and want everybody to come to us, and that might not be the best idea. We need to make sure that we are as most accessible to the folks that we are trying to serve. The location should also be someplace where the community feels safe. I've been involved previously with an event that actually took place at the courthouse. People don't necessarily feel safe at the courthouse. I think we need to just make sure that where we're having these events are places where people can go and know that these might be places that they would normally go anyway. When I was running a program related to record clearance, we would have clinic days, we would have event days down at the local coffee shop. And it was actually a coffee shop that was run by young people who were experiencing homelessness. It was a place that everybody loved in the neighborhood. It was a place that young people felt free to come to. They were accepted for who they are. And it was a great place to be. And we always had young people coming in and out. And the timing of the event may need to be in off hours, evenings or weekends. Not necessarily the most convenient if we would like to work a 9 to 5, but I think that it oftentimes helps us make sure that we're reaching as many people as possible. Some people are working those 9 to 5 jobs too, but they do need the help to get their records cleared. They might be in school during the day, and having events on the evenings or weekends might be helpful. It's also very important to make sure that we offer comprehensive services. So provide full representation, meaning sometimes as much as possible, if you're able to, don't just fill out the paperwork, do everything. Fill out the paperwork, represent them at the hearing. Because some states, the process is pretty confusing. Not only do they have to comply with these eligibility requirements, they still have to prove good cause, or they still have to prove that they've been rehabilitated. And sometimes that's something that is a little too complicated for folks to understand what that means and how do I prove it and what do I need to show, and then also how do I get beyond the evidentiary requirements that may be put on them by the court. So as much as possible, it's important to provide full representation. Complete as much paperwork as possible while sitting with the client, so that while you're there with them that you are fully engaged and they get as much services and assistance there. It includes filing petitions on behalf of clients, assisting with and gathering required accompanying documentation. Some states require fingerprint records to go along with the petition. Some states require an official printout of their record to go along with the petition. Other states require a letter of rehabilitation. Whatever these things are, we should try to assist gathering all that. And then another barrier that oftentimes is met is that there's filing fees that come along with these petitions. So in order to file a petition, you have to pay a $15 or $30. I've actually seen in states like South Carolina, the obligation is $315, and it is not waivable. That's for juvenile records. I don't know what the adult records is, but it is atrocious to think that a young person is going to be able to have that much money to be able to do that. And we have seen organizations that have gone out and raised funds to be able to help pay for those filing fees that are causing these barriers to people being able to get their records cleared.
So I just want to briefly be able to talk about that social media piece. I think that, and Victor, feel free to jump in because I think that you have a lot of great points to be able to also include. So feel free to make this a back and forth. But I think that social media is a great way to be able to reach out to young people, especially the young people that are impacted. You know, and so what young people will say to me, now that I'm a little bit older, they would call me an old head. So they would say, Facebook is for the old heads, you know, Twitter, but what they really like is Instagram. And so Instagram is a great opportunity to be able to, again, you know, use images, thinking of a flyer and thinking of real simple statements, you know, where you can say, do you have a juvenile record? You know, join us at such and such record center at such and such time. All are welcome. You know, walk-ins are welcome. You know, just keeping it real simple, keeping it real positive. Trying to use that successful language, you know, how do you move forward, you know, and not feeling set back, you know. But the idea is also, again, if you're committed to doing these efforts with other community-based organizations, also being able to show what I call that social media love, being able to tag them in there as well. So then that way what it is that young people are savvy. So when they're connecting with your organization, then they can then follow the hyperlink to other organizations, find out other information as well. But never never discount that, you know, the power of social media, especially when it comes to young people. So,
and I
Victor,
think another point, I think another point to add on to those is, like you said, the young people are very, very savvy, and I'm still learning a lot myself. And I actually find myself giving out my social media handles while I'm giving out business cards. And I even made a point to put it on my business cards now. Because part of that, too, is, especially with young people, and the way most cities, you know, people are always on the move, always on their move. nobody really stops to look at their cards or business cards anymore, but if they have accessible access from their mobile device, they did it a lot faster, and I've seen a lot of young people do it. So great examples as well. We work with young kids on social media best practices. We teach youth what they should not post. When we tell people, don't post anything that you cannot live with or you cannot stomach when you're 80 years old. Don't post it. You know, when you're trying to fill out college applications in certain places now, you know, a lot of expensive Ivy League schools are looking into this stuff right now. But I think most importantly is, just like Jose said, if they can find me on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or things like that, and now I'm connected to all these other amazing organizations, kids these days, not even kids, everyone's always intrigued by the unknown, right? So they're going to click on the next one that's a favorite of mine, and they'll see Osborne Association, or they'll see a Philadelphia firm, or things like that, you know, and it keeps it kind of progressive. But I think there's a big thing about social media is the misconception that just because someone sees it, they're going to take to it. That is far from the truth. Social media, I have learned, is I have to continuously engage. So when I'm checking my posts for a workshop event I have coming up next Saturday, and I'm actually seeing who's like it, I'm pretty much stalking my own social media page. So as I see someone like, or as I see someone show interest, or, you know, they'll ask a question, hey, what time is this? Where is it? What neighborhood is it? When they get direct responses back at a rapid pace, they get more excited about interacting with me. If someone asks a question and they don't hear back from me until 2 days later, and then it's like, all right, well, whatever. You know what I mean? So really handling that aspect of it and really promoting what's going on there, and not just the workshop. Like, if I have a workshop next Saturday, I might post a flyer, but then on Monday, I'm posting something else that's related to it or something like that. Or then I'm posting something else. But I'm really keeping them engaged so they can have a direct line of contact they can go to remind either themselves or a close friend or family member.
No, you're right. And I think that, you know, it all goes back to that relationship piece. And one of the things that we're looking at here at NJDC is, you know, how do we use social media to be able to engage with our community across the country? You know, and that would be a challenge for different organizations, for different defenders' offices, for defense practitioners, you know, to consider being able to use those social media pieces to be able to reach out to young people. One of the things that we would like to start doing with our Instagram is shift the focus of it, so that way it solely gears towards young people and messaging for young people, and hopefully get to a point where what it is I'm working with young people to help inform what that engagement should look like, what those pieces should look like. Because quite honest, I mean, the best person to be able to tell a young person, you know, what they need to know is another young person. And I really think that when we have these groups of young people that have been impacted by the system, they have so much to be able to offer, and this is an opportunity and a space for them to be able to share, to give back, and to be able to create that community where other people can benefit from what they have to say. You know, so one of the things that we're looking at right now, real quick, would be a social media post that I had done about a year and a half back to be able to help people understand what's going on. And anytime you can use pictures with words, you're going to be able to engage more people. Anytime you're able to use video, I think that's another way to be able to connect with people. But the idea is, you know, keeping it as simple as possible, really appealing, I think, to that human interest piece. I think that with social media, we have an opportunity to be able to engage hearts and minds, and at the same time be able to engage people. But again, it's a relationship. You know, I think it's constancy, and I think that that's the one thing that we're up against, is we're dealing with a lot of young people who may or may not have that present in their lives. And I think that, you know, social media is another way to be able to get out there.
So we have a question where someone asked about issues of confidentiality having your event in a public place. And in my experience, we would always make sure that there is a space wherever we have our events that would allow for that privileged conversation to remain confidential and privileged. So, for example, the coffee shop that we went to had a room on to the side that had one of those barn doors. Most of the time it's open and it's just used as general community space, but they allowed us to come in once every other week and use that space to talk to young people who came in to ask questions. And so we were able to close the door and then have those confidential conversations. I think that we, partnered with the YMCA, and the YMCA gave us an office space within their area once every other week also. So wherever we went, though it was a place that was closer to, more accessible to, maybe even a public place where people are constantly going in and out, we made sure that there was a space that we could have those conversations, because it's part of building trust and rapport with young people to talk about privilege and confidentiality. And if you don't have that private space, how are they going to believe that your conversation is privileged and confidential when the guy on the table next to you can hear everything you say? So yes, I think it is important, but you can still find those semi-private, totally private spaces while you're still in public areas. And I think that one of the other questions we had was, have you had a successful engagement with juvenile record clearing through using technology in creative ways?
Yeah, I think that it's all really going to come down to that face-to-face and being able to have earnest conversations with people. But I really believe that social media is that piece to be able to engage people, connect them, and invite them to come in. And I think that the more that you can do with the simplicity of your message with the design, I think you can build that trust so that way people can come in and be a part of it.
Another thing that we were able to do, just to add on to this question, is as a community organizer, I'm always looking for creative ways just to engage you. So one of the things we've done recently is we actually met with some guys that do projected holograms. The holograms come out to about like 8 feet tall. They can do up to 40 feet wide. And we did it somewhat of a protest thing with youth. So pretty much the youth came in, they recorded the hologram, and we can use the hologram all over the city, right? So that was something that, it was kind of, I guess you want to say, a tactic, so to speak, just to get them more excited about actually doing the hologram. But then we tone that back, and now we give them the information on why they're doing the hologram and what's drawing them in. So a lot of times when we talk about technology, and not just social media either, YouTubers, things like that, people who have a social media presence, we reach out to a lot of people through that. We do a lot of tweeting on our events through the Community Justice Unit just to keep people engaged and see what community that we're in. But I think technology now, one of the biggest things that we were able to do was working with the hologram people and recording life-size holograms with youth. Also, another thing that we're doing is public service announcements with youth. So in New York, quick example, we're actually working on dismantling the NYPD's gang database. And what's better way for us to make a public service announcement but to utilize the youth that it's affecting. So we worked with another organization that has youth readily there, and we talked to them about the PSAs, what it should be cool, and we gave them free reign. They created it, they made it up. We just made sure it stuck to the criteria of how it's affecting them in their everyday lives. So I think that's another thing we should always think of, is how to be progressive when sharing information, not just a workshop, not just a flyer or a tweet, so to speak, but really engaging them in artistic sides with the youth as well.
Thank you so much, Victor. I think we're all very jealous and wish we could have a Victor in our office.
No.
If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to continue these conversations outside of the webinar too.
All right, it looks like we're coming up at the end here. If there aren't any more questions, as Serena said, if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to any of the presenters today with your questions. Or you can email cleanslate@chsgjustice.org, and we will be able to direct your questions to the appropriate person or answer the questions ourselves. So with that, we just want to say thank you again to Serena, to José, and to Victor for a great presentation on engaging the community, engaging youth around record clearance issues, and really talking about how to, what are the best strategies communication-wise, engagement-wise, to get the message across and to make sure that youth are engaged in the activities that that your organization is a part of. Again, like I said, for additional questions, you can email the presenters or email the Clean Slate Clearinghouse. And we also encourage you to sign up for our newsletter at cleanslateclearinghouse.org. Sign up for the newsletter. Go to the website, as Serena said, to look at those record clearance policies, both for juvenile and adult, to find out more information on record clearance in your state. And we encourage you to share this resource. It will be posted on the website, on the Clean Slate Clearinghouse website in a couple of weeks, probably by next week, so you can get the PDF, you can get the slides, and get all this information as well. With that, again, we want to say thank you to the presenters. Thank you to everyone for joining us today, and have a great day.
Thank you.